Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we are drifting into the dark and thoughtful world of crows. They are birds most people have seen so many times that they can begin to feel like part of the background. A black shape on a wire, a voice from a tree at the edge of a parking lot, a bird crossing the sky just as the light begins to thin. They are familiar in such a quiet and constant way that it becomes easy not to look at them closely. And yet, the moment you do, something changes. Because a crow is not only a common bird, it is a bird that remembers, a bird that studies, a bird that can seem almost ordinary from far away, then surprisingly deep and difficult to ignore once you learn what it can actually do. Some crows can remember human faces for years. Research has shown that wild crows can learn to recognize a dangerous person and keep reacting to that face long after the first encounter. Some crows can also build new tools by joining separate parts together, which is one of those facts that feels almost too strange at first, as if it belongs to a different kind of animal altogether. Researchers have also found that when crows gather around a dead crow, they may be doing more than simply reacting. They appear to use those moments to learn about danger and remember what might threaten them in that place. And in a 2024 study, crows were shown producing 1 to 4 calls in response to number cues, which means that even their voices can carry a kind of deliberate control that most people would never expect from a bird. That is part of what makes crows so fascinating in a quiet way. They do not need bright feathers or a beautiful song to hold your attention. Their mystery comes from somewhere else. It comes from the feeling that there is more going on behind those dark eyes than we first assume. And crows fit the evening especially well. They are not night birds in the way owls are, but they belong beautifully to the edges of the day. They gather in fading light. They cross pale winter skies. They settle into dark trees as the last brightness leaves the air. At dusk, their bodies become simple silhouettes, almost pure shape. And yet the life inside that shape may hold memory, caution, social knowledge, and a detailed awareness of the world around it. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. The quiet continues here, just as it is. There is something especially calming about starting with a creature that lives so close to us, yet still feels partly unknown. Crows live near roads, rooftops, schoolyards, chimneys, bare branches, fields, and fences. They have adapted to human spaces with remarkable success. They walk across parking lots as if they belong there. They perch on street lights and power lines. They seem to understand that our world runs on routines, and they watch those routines with a patience that can feel almost uncanny. That feeling is not simply imagination. Crows are widely recognized as highly intelligent birds. They can solve problems, learn from experience, remember useful information, and change their behavior when conditions change. They do not move through the world blindly. They pay attention to what works. They notice patterns. They remember what matters. And because of that, a crow can begin to feel less like a passing bird and more like a quiet witness to the places where we live. So tonight, there is no need to hurry past them. We can let the crow become what it has always been, not just a dark form against the sky, but a living creature with intelligence, caution, memory, and presence. A bird that has shared space with human beings for a very long time. A bird that still carries a touch of mystery, not because it is hidden, but because it has been there in plain sight all along. And if crows begin to feel a little different once you truly pause to look at them, that may be because they have been looking back for longer than we realized. To understand why a crow can feel so striking, it helps to stay with the bird itself for a little while longer. Before the memory, before the problem solving, before the long social life hidden inside its calls and watchfulness. There is first the shape of a crow, and the way that shape moves through the world with such quiet certainty. A crow is built in a way that feels strong without seeming heavy. Its body is compact but not small. Its neck is thick enough to give it presence, and its bill is sturdy, straight, and unmistakable. The head is rounded, the chest full, the legs dark and firm. Nothing about the bird looks fragile. Even standing still, a crow gives the impression of readiness, as if it could launch into motion at any moment and would know exactly where to go. From a distance, many people think of crows as simply black birds. But up close, black is not quite the right word. Their feathers often hold a sheen that shifts in the light, showing hints of blue, violet, or oil-like gloss. In bright sun, the body can flash with hidden color. In cloudier light, that same bird can appear almost matte, as if it has absorbed the day around it. By evening, the feathers darken again into silhouette, and the crow becomes less like a collection of details and more like a single clear form. That clear form is part of why crows are so easy to recognize. The wings are broad, the tail opens like a fan. The body holds a certain balance in flight, steady and controlled. A gull may glide, and a pigeon may flutter, but a crow seems to row its way through the air with slow, deliberate beats. There is purpose in the motion. Even when the bird is only crossing from one rooftop to another, it rarely looks careless. On the ground, that same feeling remains. Crows do not move with the tiny, nervous energy of some smaller birds. They walk with long steps. They pause. They tilt the head. They seem to inspect the ground rather than peck at it blindly. Sometimes they hop, but even that feels measured. There is often a sense that the crow is not just passing through a place. It is checking it, reading it, deciding what matters there. The face adds even more to this impression. A crow's eyes are set into a dark head that gives little away, and perhaps that is one reason people find them so memorable. The eye can look bright one moment and almost disappear the next depending on the angle of the light. There is no colorful mask, no soft pattern to make the expression easy to read. And so the smallest turn of the head begins to matter. A slight pause, a fixed look, a quick glance to one side. These little movements can make the bird seem unusually aware, as though it is following events just beyond what we notice ourselves. The voice of a crow adds another layer. It is not a sweet sound, and it does not try to be. The call is rough, dry, open, and strong. It carries across roads, fields, neighborhoods, and bare winter branches in a way that is hard to ignore. A crow does not sing to disappear into the background. It announces itself. And yet, heard from far away, especially near dusk, even that roughness can become strangely calming. One call from a distant tree can make a whole evening feel quieter, as though the day is settling into its final shape. Seen this way, a crow is not a dramatic bird in the usual sense. It does not need bright color or ornate feathers. Its beauty is simpler than that. It comes from structure, from confidence, from the way every part of the body seems fitted to alertness and movement. A crow perched on a branch is still. A crow crossing a pale sky is only a shadow for a few seconds. But both can leave a lasting impression, because the bird is made of such strong and readable lines. And once the body of the crow becomes familiar, another question begins to rise from that dark and steady shape. What is happening inside all that attention, all that pause, all that careful looking? What begins to matter next is the attention itself. Not just the dark body, or the broad wings, or the rough call from a branch, but the strange feeling that a crow is rarely in a place without noticing it. A crow often seems to arrive already aware. It lands, pauses, lifts its head, and looks. Then it looks again. Even before it moves, it can seem as though it has already taken the measure of the ground below, the people nearby, and the shape of the moment it has entered. That may be one reason crows stay with us in memory. Many birds pass through a scene like quick pieces of motion, here and gone before the eye has settled on them. A crow often does the opposite. It slows a place down. It stands on a fence, a rooftop, a telephone wire, or the bare arm of a tree. And for a few quiet seconds, it feels less like a visitor and more like a witness. It does not only occupy a place, it seems to read it. Part of that impression comes from the way crows use stillness. A perched crow may appear calm and simple, but a great deal is happening inside that still shape. It may be checking the ground for food, keeping track of nearby people, listening for other crows, and scanning the sky for danger at the same time. This kind of attention is one of the real facts behind the bird's reputation. Crows are highly alert animals, and much of their intelligence begins there, with careful notice. Their bodies help them do this well. Like many birds, a crow's eyes sit more to the sides of the head than ours do, which gives it a wide view of the world around it. It can watch a broad space without turning its whole body. But crows also make small head movements again and again, and those movements help them judge distance, angle, and detail. So when a crow tilts its head and fixes its gaze, it is not simply striking a pose. It is gathering information from the space in front of it. A quiet road at the end of the day may look empty to us. To a crow, it can be full of signals. There may be food near one curb, risk near another, and a familiar routine unfolding at the same hour it unfolded yesterday. The crow on a streetlight is not only standing above the scene, it is studying it. That helps explain why crows so often choose high places. Poles, wires, rooftops, and upper branches give them time to assess what is below before they commit themselves to the ground. Height gives safety, but it also gives knowledge. This is where a crow begins to feel different from the simple idea many people carry of a black bird. It is not only surviving in the world, it is paying close attention to the world. A crow can wait before acting. It can hold back, compare, and decide. Even its caution has a kind of calm intelligence to it. Instead of flying off at every movement, it may remain where it is, watching to see whether the movement matters, Instead of rushing toward food, it may first study the space around the food. That pause, so small from the outside, is one of the clearest signs that the bird is not moving only on reflex. You can see this especially in places where crows live close to people. In cities, neighborhoods, schoolyards, parking lots, and parks. They seem to know when a person is simply passing through, and when a person is behaving in a way worth tracking. They do not respond to all humans in the same flat way. The world is more detailed than that. A familiar sidewalk, a row of houses, a cluster of bins, or a backyard fence can become part of a crow's stored knowledge. Over time, the bird is not just seeing a place, it is building a history of that place. That history is one reason crows can feel so thoughtful in evening light. As the day softens and detail fades, the crow remains attentive. Its outline may darken into silhouette, but the awareness inside that outline does not seem to dim with it. If anything, it stands out more. A still crow against a pale sky can look as though it has all the time in the world to notice what the rest of the world is doing. And once attention becomes that sharp and that steady, it no longer feels enough to say that a crow only sees. A bird like this begins to look as though it learns. That is the next quiet step in understanding a crow. Not only that it sees, but that it learns from what it sees. The world does not simply wash over a crow and disappear. It leaves traces. A useful place stays useful in memory. A dangerous place can remain tense long after the danger is gone. A face, a sound, a pattern of movement, a certain hour of the day, all of these can gather meaning through repetition. And slowly, what first looked like simple alertness begins to look more like experience taking shape. Learning in a crow often begins with trial and error, the same slow process that shapes so much of life. The bird tries one path, one perch, one object, one approach to food, and then something happens. Perhaps it works, perhaps it fails, perhaps it nearly works, but not quite. Then, on another day, the crow returns with a small change in behavior. It waits a little longer. It approaches from a different angle. It chooses a different branch or drops lower with more caution. What matters is not only the action, but the adjustment. This kind of learning is part of why crows do so well in changing places. Fields change with weather. Trees change with season. Human spaces change with traffic, routines, noise, and the slow turning of the year. A bird that depended only on fixed instincts would struggle more in such shifting surroundings. But crows are flexible. They can notice what has changed and alter their behavior in response. A food source that appears every week near a certain place can become part of their working knowledge. A yard with a barking dog can become a place to avoid. A road that is busy at one hour and quiet at another can be read almost like a schedule. Scientists who study animal behavior often describe learning as a process of association. One event becomes linked with another. A place becomes linked with food. A face becomes linked with danger. A sound becomes linked with the arrival of something useful or threatening. That may sound simple, but in a crow, it can become rich and layered. The bird is not only storing one isolated fact, it may be storing a whole little scene. The location, the timing, the level of risk, the chance of reward, the behavior of other crows nearby. This allows the world to become more detailed over time rather than less. You can picture this in a very ordinary scene. A crow lands near a dropped piece of food in a parking lot. The first time, it may hesitate. Cars are moving. A person is crossing nearby. Another crow is watching from a pole. The bird waits, steps forward, stops again, then takes the food and flies to a safer place. The next time a similar chance appears, that earlier moment may help shape what happens. The crow may judge the distance more quickly. It may know how close is too close. It may watch the motion of wheels and feet with more confidence than before. In that way, the bird is not just surviving the moment, it is being shaped by it. Young crows have even more to learn. For them, the world is full of half-understood objects and uncertain distances. They watch older birds. They test surfaces. They approach, retreat, and approach again. In this way, learning is both personal and social. A young crow may discover something on its own, but it also inherits part of its understanding by watching others who already know the local patterns. One bird notices a safe feeding chance. Another bird sees that bird respond. Information moves through the group, not as human language, but as shared attention. This is one reason crow behavior can seem so thoughtful from a distance. What you are watching in that dark bird on the branch may be the visible surface of many earlier moments. The pause before it drops to the ground may contain memory. The choice of where it lands may contain comparison. The decision to stay or leave may contain lessons gathered over many days. Even a small shift in behavior can reflect the slow building of knowledge. And that knowledge does not need to look dramatic. Often it looks very quiet. A crow choosing one route instead of another. A crow giving more space to one person than to the next. A crow arriving at a place just when something useful tends to happen. Learning rarely announces itself. More often, it settles gently into the body until a bird begins to move through the world with a little more precision than before. Seen that way, a crow becomes more than a watcher. It becomes a student of whatever surrounds it. The streets, the trees, the weather, the habits of other animals, the repeated motions of people, all of it can become material for memory and adjustment. And once a bird can do that, once it can take the world in and slowly reshape its own behavior around what it has learned, another possibility begins to rise from that dark and patient shape. It may not only be learning from the world, it may also be beginning to work on the world itself. That is where the crow begins to feel even more unusual. It is one thing for an animal to learn from the world around it. Many animals do that in their own way. It is another thing to begin changing the world, even slightly, so that a problem becomes easier to solve. That is the quiet threshold reached when a crow uses a tool. For a long time, people treated tool use as if it belonged almost entirely to human beings, with only a few rare exceptions among other animals. A tool seemed like proof of a special kind of thought. After all, a tool is not food, and it is not shelter, and it is not the final reward. It is something in between. Something chosen because it helps reach something else. It asks for a kind of patience, a kind of indirect thinking. The crow cannot simply want the food. It must understand that another object can help it get there. Some crows do exactly that. In certain species, especially the New Caledonian crow, tool use is one of the most remarkable behaviors ever seen in a bird. These crows have been observed using sticks, leaf stems, and shaped plant material to pull insects and grubs from cracks in wood. A hidden meal, tucked just beyond the reach of a beak, becomes possible to reach with the help of a simple object held and guided with care. Seen from a distance, the action looks almost delicate. The bird grips the stick, probes the opening, adjusts the angle, and works patiently until the food comes free. What makes this so striking is not only the result, but the sequence. A crow faced with a hard-to-reach reward does not always give up. It may search the ground, inspect nearby branches, or choose a particular piece of plant material that has the right size and shape. Sometimes it even trims or alters the object before using it. That means the stick is not just something it happens to hold. It becomes something selected for a purpose. There is a calm intelligence in that moment. The crow is not acting wildly or by accident. It is attending to shape, reach, and fit. The world becomes full of possible extensions of its own body. A branch is no longer only part of a tree. A leaf stem is no longer only plant matter. In the right moment, the ordinary object becomes useful because the crow can imagine what it might do. This also changes the way we picture the bird itself. A crow on a branch is no longer just perched above the world. It is surrounded by materials. Twigs, leaves, bark, narrow openings in wood, edges, gaps, and hidden spaces. What looks to us like an ordinary tree may look to a crow like a place full of tools and problems waiting to be solved. The whole scene becomes richer once you understand that possibility. A dark bird in quiet afternoon light may not simply be resting. It may be evaluating. Tool use also slows the moment down in a beautiful way. Instead of a quick peck and a quick reward, there is a pause between wanting and getting. A crow may try one object and find that it bends too much. It may pick up another and find that it is too short. It may shift its feet on the branch, tilt its head, and try again. This is not frantic motion. It is measured effort. The bird appears to be testing the world, asking what works and what does not. And in some cases, crows seem to go even further than using found tools. They have shown the ability to combine separate pieces into a longer tool when one piece alone is not enough. That is one of the facts that can make people stop and rethink what a bird is capable of. The crow is no longer simply using what it finds. It is building toward a solution. The parts become one thing because one thing is needed. This does not mean a crow thinks like a human. It means something more interesting. It thinks like a crow, and the crow way of solving problems is far richer than most people ever guessed. The beak, the eye, the feet, the careful pause, the chosen stick, the narrow opening in bark, all of it comes together in one quiet act of intelligence. Once you begin to see that, the world around a crow changes forever. A roadside tree is no longer just a tree. A patch of ground is no longer just debris and leaves. The place is full of possible uses, possible paths, and possible answers. And if a crow can do that, if it can shape the world just enough to reach what it wants, then the next question begins to gather gently behind the scene. Is it only solving the problem in front of it, or is it beginning to think ahead? That question can be approached slowly. A crow does not need to become a little person in feathers to feel impressive. It is enough to notice that some of its actions seem to reach a little farther than the present moment. Not always, and not in every situation, but often enough to make the old picture of a simple bird begin to feel too small. A crow faced with a problem may not only react to what is directly in front of it. Sometimes it appears to hold on to what came before and to act in a way that suggests some quiet sense of what may come next. This is part of what makes crow intelligence feel so steady rather than flashy. The bird does not solve every problem in the same way. It does not move through life with one fixed answer. Instead, it seems especially strong in flexible situations, the kind where the world changes shape from day to day. A useful place may be useful only at a certain hour. A path that feels safe one morning may feel exposed the next. Food may appear in one form today and another form tomorrow. In that kind of shifting world, memory becomes more than storage. It becomes guidance. A crow can remember where something good happened before. That may be a feeding place, a quiet tree, a safe route across a busy area, or a place where other crows tend to gather. Memory lets the bird return, compare, and adjust. A familiar field is not only a field. It is a field in late autumn, or after rain, or near a road, or active at one hour and empty at another. The details begin to collect. Over time, a crow seems to build not just points of memory, but patterns. That is why their learning can feel so deep. What stays in a crow's experience is not only an object. It may be an object in a certain place, at a certain time, with a certain level of risk. A curb may be linked with food. A branch may be linked with safety. A person may be linked with distance or caution. The memory becomes part of the landscape itself. The world grows thicker with meaning. And some crow behavior seems to go a little farther still. In certain experiments, crows have shown forms of future-oriented behavior that make researchers pause. A bird may keep or select a useful tool not just because it is useful now, but because it may be useful later. That does not mean the crow imagines the future the way we do, wrapped in words and plans and long inner stories. But it does suggest that the bird can act in the present with something beyond the present in view. There is a quiet beauty in that idea. A crow perched in a tree with a tool held in its beak may not only be solving the problem of the moment, it may be bridging one moment to another. The hidden food is not reached yet, but the path toward it has already begun. The bird carries a piece of tomorrow inside the movement of today. Memory supports that kind of behavior. Without memory, the world would stay flat. Every day would need to begin again from the beginning. But crows do not seem to live in such a thin present. Their world has weight. Repeated events can stay with them. Useful choices can become easier to make. Risk can be recognized sooner. A place that once held reward may draw them back. A place that held trouble may stay marked for a long time. This is one reason crows can appear so composed in complicated environments. It is not that every crow always knows exactly what to do. It is that past experience can remain available, ready to be used when the situation shifts. Their intelligence seems strongest not in one perfect trick, but in the ability to adapt. The world changes, and the crow changes with it. That is also why comparisons with human thought can miss the point. A crow does not need to resemble us in every way to deserve our attention. Its abilities are striking because they belong to a crow, shaped by air, distance, caution, memory, and social life. Its cognition is not smaller because it is different. In its own way, it is precise, capable, and beautifully fitted to the kind of world a crow must read. And perhaps the most surprising kind of memory is not memory for sticks, roads, feeding places, or safe branches, but memory that turns toward living beings. Because once a crow remembers us, the whole shared landscape changes with it. What begins to feel especially surprising here is how directly crow intelligence can touch human life. It is one thing to imagine a crow remembering a branch, a road, a food source, or a useful tool. It is something else to imagine that the bird may also remember us. Not just people in a general blur, but particular people, tied to particular experiences, stored inside the crow's long and careful attention. This idea can sound almost too neat at first, as if it belongs to folklore more than science. And yet, one of the clearest findings in crow research is that crows can learn to recognize human faces associated with danger and remember them over long periods. In well-known research, wild crows responded strongly to a specific threatening face and kept reacting to it later, even after time had passed. That means the world of a crow is not made only of weather, distance, trees, roofs, and food. It can also hold individual humans, marked by memory and meaning. Once you picture that, an ordinary street corner begins to change. A person walking beneath a line of trees may feel anonymous, one more passerby among many. But to a crow above, that same figure may not be anonymous at all. It may be someone familiar, linked with caution, or someone unremarkable, not worth reacting to. The dark bird on the branch may appear still, but its stillness can contain judgment. The face below may already belong to a category formed long before that moment began. Part of what makes this so striking is that crow memory does not always remain private. The response to a threatening person can spread socially, with other crows joining in or learning the danger as well. In that way, a face can move through the crow world and become shared knowledge. One bird reacts, another notices, and the meaning of that human begins to extend beyond a single encounter. A crow's warning is not only sound, it can become a kind of social teaching. That helps explain why some people feel strangely singled out by local crows. A person may walk the same block each day and notice that the crows there seem especially watchful, especially vocal, or especially unwilling to relax. The feeling can be uncanny, but it does not need mystery to explain it. If a crow has learned that a certain face once belonged to trouble, then the next sight of that face may wake the old memory immediately. The body may tense. The call may sharpen. Other nearby crows may pay attention too. What feels eerie from the ground may simply be memory doing its work in the air. And that memory can settle into a place as deeply as it settles into a bird. A pole, a sidewalk, a narrow stretch of road, a patch of schoolyard, a backyard fence. All of these can carry history for crows who live nearby. To us, a neighborhood may seem to renew itself every day. The same parked cars, the same houses, the same routine. To a crow, it may be layered with remembered events. Food appeared here. A loud threat passed there. One person was harmless. Another person came too close. The familiar place becomes a map of experience, and the faces moving through it become part of that map. There is something calm and humbling in that thought. We are used to imagining ourselves as the watchers. We walk under the branches and assume that the birds above are background. But a crow may be noticing us with a steadiness we rarely return. It may know more about our repeated habits than we know about its own. The same morning walk, the same coat, the same speed of movement, the same gate opening at the same hour. All of this can become information in the crow's world. This does not mean crows hold little human stories in the way we do, filled with names and language and inner narration. It means something quieter and more exact. They can attach a face to an outcome. They can preserve that outcome through time. And they can use it later when the face appears again. That alone is enough to make the ordinary crow on a wire feel newly impressive. Because once a crow can remember a face, the air around it begins to feel more social, more layered, and more alive with recognition. The bird above is no longer just living among objects and changes in weather. It is living among individuals. And if its world contains individuals, then it also contains signals meant to move between them. The next thing to notice is not only what crows remember, but how they tell one another what matters. From there, it feels natural to listen. Once a crow's world begins to include memory, faces, warning, and recognition, the roughness of its voice starts to sound different too. What first seems like a simple call, dry and blunt, and almost harsh against the air, begins to feel less like noise and more like message. The sound may not be beautiful in the way people often use that word, but beauty is not the point. A crow's voice is built to carry. It is built to cut through open space, through branches, rooftops, traffic, wind, and evening distance. And once it reaches another crow, it does not arrive empty. It arrives with meaning. That is part of what makes the sound world of crows so interesting. To human ears, many crow calls can blur together at first. One rough cry may seem much like another. But bird communication does not need to sound musical to be complex. According to the Cornell Lab's All About Birds, American crows have more than 20 calls, and the familiar harsh call itself can vary in quality and length depending on context. They also produce quieter mixtures of coos, rattles, clicks, and other sounds arranged into longer sequences. In other words, what seems plain from far away may be more layered up close, with the crow using timing, repetition, pitch, and context the way a person might use tone of voice. A call can do different kinds of work. Some crow sounds appear to warn. Some help gather others. Some may help keep contact between birds that are spread through trees, fields, or neighborhood streets. A crow on a high branch may call once and then wait, and from farther away another crow answers. Then another. What seemed like one solitary bird becomes part of a web of sound stretched across the space of the day. Even when the birds are out of sight, their voices can reveal the outline of a social world. The tree, the wire, the rooftop, the edge of the road, all begin to feel connected by sound moving through open air. This makes the roughness of the crow's voice feel newly fitting. the sound is not shaped for sweetness. It is shaped for usefulness. A soft, delicate note would disappear too easily in the places crows often live, but a strong core carries. It can alert. It can locate. It can pull attention toward one point in the landscape. That is especially easy to picture in evening light, when crows move toward roosts, cross pale sky in dark groups, and call from trees that are already beginning to lose detail. The voice remains clear, even as the body becomes silhouette. And that voice has become even more interesting in light of recent research. In a 2024 science study, researchers showed that crows could flexibly produce 1 to 4 vocalizations in response to cues linked with number. That does not mean crows sit in trees doing arithmetic the way a human would, but it does mean their vocal control can be more deliberate than people once assumed. A crow can produce a chosen number of calls in a way that suggests a more precise relationship between intention and sound. The air around a calling crow becomes a little richer once you know that. Even a short burst of sound may hold more control inside it than the listener first realizes. There is something deeply calming in that thought too. The world is full of animal sounds we do not understand, yet they are not empty because we fail to decode them. A crow calling from a branch above a road is still participating in a meaningful exchange, whether or not the human below can follow it. Another crow may understand whether that call is ordinary, tense, summoning, or directed toward a change in the scene. The message does not disappear just because we do not possess it. This is one reason crows feel less solitary the longer we pay attention to them. A single crow on a roof may look alone, but the moment it calls, the possibility of others enters the scene. Another bird may answer from a chimney, from a stand of trees, from a parking lot light, from beyond the visible edge of the block. The voice creates connection before the eye confirms it. Sound reaches farther than shape. It turns separate birds into a group and a scattered landscape into shared space. So the call of a crow is not just a mark of presence. It is evidence of relationship. It tells us that this bird belongs to others, listens for others, and is heard by others in return. And once that is true, one sound begins tying one crow to another. The bird stops feeling like a single clever creature moving through the world alone. What takes shape instead is a social life, already there in the branches, already there above the roofs, already there in the rough, dark music passing from one crow to the next. Once sound begins moving between one crow and another, the bird no longer feels solitary in the way people often imagine wild animals to be. A crow may be alone on a wire for the moment, or crossing a pale sky by itself, but much of its life is shaped by relationship. The world of crows is not built only from food, weather, memory, and caution. It is also built from pair bonds, offspring, siblings, helpers, rivals, and the steady exchange of attention inside a group. The intelligence of a crow does not grow in emptiness. It grows inside social life. This is one reason crows become even more interesting the longer they are observed. Their cleverness is not only an individual trait, like a single bird solving a single problem. It often lives inside a family structure. American crows, for example, are known for strong pair bonds, and many family groups include young from earlier years who remain with the parents and help raise new chicks. Instead of leaving at the first chance and living entirely alone, Some younger crows stay near home, becoming part of a small, extended social unit. The nest, the nearby trees, the regular feeding spaces, and the territory itself all become shared points in a continuing family life. That quiet arrangement changes how the bird's life feels when you picture it. A crow bringing food is not always acting only for itself. A warning call may not be for the caller alone. One bird watching from a high branch may be watching for several others below. The air around a crow family can be full of small acts of coordination that are easy to miss if all we notice is the black outline against the sky. But beneath that outline is a network of concern and response. One bird moves, another reacts. One bird finds food, another benefits. One bird senses danger, and several lives change course because of it. Young crows seem to benefit deeply from this kind of life. They do not enter the world already polished and fully skilled. They grow into it through repetition, correction, and observation. In a family group, there are older birds to watch. There are rhythms to absorb. There are places already known, routes already used, dangers already recognized, and habits already established. A younger crow can inherit part of its world not only through instinct, but through proximity. It is born into a watched world, a world already carrying memory. That may be one reason crow intelligence can feel so grounded. It is not only quick thinking in a dramatic moment. It is also accumulated family knowledge. A place that has been good for food may stay part of the group's routine. A person known to be risky may remain part of the group's caution. A tree that offers safety at dusk may become familiar across seasons. Social living lets information last longer than a single bird's brief experience. In that sense, intelligence spreads. It does not remain sealed inside one skull. It moves through behavior, timing, and attention, from bird to bird. There is something calming in the image of that. A row of crows in bare branches at evening can look stark and simple from the ground. But if some of those birds are parents, offspring, and older siblings, then the tree is holding more than silhouettes. It is holding continuity. The younger birds near the older ones are not just sharing space. They are sharing a life shaped by repeated contact, mutual warning, and slow learning. The black forms against the fading sky become part of a family structure as real as any quieter domestic scene below. This also helps explain why crows can seem so socially aware. A bird living in close relation with others has more to notice and more reason to notice it. Sound matters, position matters, response matters, a delayed warning, a missed movement, a poorly judged approach to danger. Any of these can affect more than one bird. Social life can sharpen attention. It can also deepen flexibility, because each crow is moving not only through the larger world, but through the changing world of the family itself. And yet none of this makes crow family life feel sentimental. It feels practical, steady, and real. These are birds whose survival is linked to memory, to caution, to food, to season, and to one another. Their bonds are not decorations placed on top of intelligence. They are part of the condition in which that intelligence develops. So when we picture a crow family, we are not leaving behind the earlier sections on learning, planning, and communication. We are seeing where much of that ability is lived out and strengthened. A single bird on a post may impress us, but the family behind that bird may be the deeper story. And a family life like that means that growing up as a crow is not quick, simple, or solitary. Inside that family life, a young crow begins in a world that is already full of signals. The branches are not just branches. They are places to balance, places to hide, places to wait, places to watch from. The air is not just open space. It is something to cross safely, something to judge in wind and rain, something to move through with skill that is not yet fully there. And the ground below is not simply ground. It is food, risk, noise, movement, people, cars, dogs, shining wrappers, fallen seeds, and all the countless ordinary things that an older crow has already learned to read. A young crow does not know all of this at once. That is part of what makes its early life so interesting. Unlike the adult bird, which can look calm and almost stern in its control, a young crow often seems louder, looser, and less certain. It may call more often. It may hesitate in the wrong place, or move forward too quickly, or seem fascinated by some small object that an older bird would judge in a second and either take or ignore. The younger bird is living in a fuller blur. The world has not yet settled into clear categories. This is why growing up matters so much for a crow. Skill is not simply dropped into the body like a finished design. A great deal of it appears to come through time, repetition, and attention. A young crow has to learn how far a jump really is. It has to learn how a branch bends under weight. It has to learn when a patch of ground is safe enough to land on, and when something in the shape of the moment should be avoided. It has to learn how close is too close to a moving car, to a barking dog, to a person who is walking casually, and to a person who is not. That learning is not always graceful. A young crow may look almost awkward beside an older one. The wings may beat a little less smoothly. The timing may be off. The landing may feel more abrupt than exact. Even the posture can seem different, as though the bird is still trying to grow fully into its own body. But that awkwardness is part of the long work of becoming skilled. The adult crow that looks so settled on a wire or so exact in its approach to the ground was not born that way. It was shaped there. Family life helps make that shaping possible. Younger crows do not have to face every lesson alone. They can watch older birds. They can follow movement, response, and timing. A parent or older sibling rising suddenly from the ground is not only moving for itself. It may be showing the younger bird that something is wrong. A cautious pause before approaching food may become its own kind of lesson. Over time, the younger crow begins to inherit not just a place, but a style of attention. The watched world of the adults becomes the watched world of the young. This makes youth in crows feel both busy and tender. There is energy in it, and noise, and uncertainty. But there is also protection in the background. A young crow calling from a branch may still be within reach of older knowledge. A bird making clumsy choices is not doing so in emptiness. It is doing so inside a family structure where information can still move toward it. That does not remove the need for trial and error, but it gives those errors a softer edge. The young bird is learning in company. You can picture this in a very ordinary evening scene. Several crows gather in a line of trees as the light fades. One adult lands cleanly and folds into stillness almost at once. A younger crow arrives less neatly, shifting its feet, flicking its wings, making a little more sound than needed. The difference is small but visible. One bird is settled into the shape of crow life. The other is still entering it. Both belong there, but in different ways. That long entry into skill is part of what makes crow intelligence feel real, rather than magical. It is not some mysterious gift that appears all at once, complete and shining. It matures. It takes form through use. The younger bird becomes less noisy in some situations, more exact in others, better at distance, better at waiting, better at choosing when to act. Intelligence, in that sense, is not separate from growing up. It is one of the things that growing up produces. And perhaps that is why clever animals so often seem drawn to play. A young creature with time, curiosity, and growing control may begin to test the world in lighter ways too. Not always for food, not always for safety. Sometimes just to see what happens when the world is touched, chased, dropped, nudged, or followed a little farther than necessary. In that softer space, learning continues, but with a different mood. It becomes exploration. That softer space is one of the loveliest parts of crow life to notice. After the care, the warning, the long memory, the family learning, and the sharp attention, there is also something lighter in the crow world. There is play. There is curiosity. There are moments when a crow seems to interact with an object, a slope, a stick, a scrap of paper, or another bird, not because survival demands it right then, but because the world has become interesting enough to test. This matters because it changes the feeling of the crow again. A crow can seem stern from a distance. Its dark body, its steady gaze, its rough voice, and its habit of watching from above can make it feel almost severe. But play loosens that image. A bird that investigates for no clear reason, or slides, or chases or drops something, and then follows it, starts to feel less like a strict observer and more like an explorer. The same intelligence that once looked guarded begins to show another face. Not only caution, but experimentation. Crows have been observed handling objects in ways that do not seem strictly necessary at the moment. A bird may pick up something, turn it, carry it, drop it, retrieve it, and repeat the process. Sometimes the object may be useful later. Sometimes it seems to be nothing more than something worth testing. This is part of what curiosity looks like in an animal. The crow does not need the object to be immediately important in order to pay attention to it. Attention itself can be the point. That kind of object play may seem small, but it tells us something important. The world, for a crow, is not made only of fixed categories. Not everything is instantly sorted into food, danger, or irrelevance. Some things remain open a little longer. A loose twig, a bottle cap, a piece of bark, a nutshell, a bright scrap caught near a curb. Any of these can become a temporary focus. The crow may test weight, movement, sound, or shape. It may simply want to see what the thing does when touched. Play like this may help sharpen skill without carrying the full pressure of survival every single time. A bird handling an object lightly may still be learning about grip, balance, timing, and physical cause and effect. A bird chasing another crow in what seems like loose, exaggerated motion, may still be practicing aerial control. A bird dropping something from a height and following its fall may be learning something about movement, impact, or sequence, even if the moment also seems fun in its own right. The line between play and learning does not need to be hard. Often, they seem to overlap. You can feel that overlap in the image of a young crow on a breezy afternoon. The bird is not searching with the focused stillness of an adult studying risk. Instead, it seems drawn from one little possibility to another. It hops toward a loose object, pauses, pecks, steps back, returns, then lifts the thing and lets it fall. There is no rush. The movement carries a kind of curiosity rather than urgency. The world is not only a place to survive, it is a place to test. And curiosity can widen social life too. Crows may tease one another, chase in loose formations, or engage in interactions that look less like conflict and more like practice with an edge of pleasure in it. Their intelligence does not always arrive wearing the same expression. Sometimes it looks serious. Sometimes it looks playful. Sometimes it looks like a bird pushing gently at the edges of what is possible, just to find out where those edges are. This is one reason crows never feel entirely mechanical. A machine repeats. A curious animal varies. A crow may approach the same space differently on different days, not because it has forgotten, but because the space itself remains alive with possibilities. The ground after rain is different from the ground in dry weather. A wrapper caught against a curb behaves differently in wind. A patch of snow, a sloping roof, a loose branch, a moving shadow. These may all invite a response that is not purely practical. The crow's behavior can carry a sense of open inquiry. What happens if this is nudged? What happens if that is followed? What happens if I do it again? There is something deeply restful in noticing intelligence expressed this way. Not as strain, not as tension, but as interest. The crow is not burdened by its cleverness. It is alive inside it. The same awareness that helps it avoid danger and remember faces also allows it to engage the world in lighter, freer ways. That is part of what makes the species feel so complete. It is not only guarded, it is not only strategic, it is also responsive, curious, and at times almost playful in a way that softens the whole shape of the bird. Curiosity becomes one more quiet strength, one more reason the crow can enter our world without ever fully belonging to it. Now the crow steps more fully into the human world. Not the forest edge, not the open field, not the branch over quiet water, but the streets, rooftops, bins, poles, parking lots, sidewalks, and back alleys that make up so much of modern life. It is here that many people know crows best, even if they do not think of it that way. The familiar black bird on the light post, the one walking across a grocery store lot, the one calling from a chimney in the late afternoon, the one waiting near a schoolyard fence after lunch. These are not rare scenes. They are ordinary. And that ordinary closeness is one reason crows have settled so deeply into human memory. Crows are highly adaptable birds. That may be the single fact that matters most in understanding why they do so well around us. A city is not a simple place for a wild animal. It is loud, fast, full of surfaces that reflect heat, full of moving machines, sudden noises, narrow spaces, shifting food sources, and 1,000 small dangers. Yet crows enter these places with unusual success. They do not merely pass through them, they learn them. The city becomes part of the crow landscape, just as surely as trees, fields, and riverbanks once were. A rooftop offers height and safety. A telephone pole offers a place to watch. A garbage bin may offer food. A parking lot may seem bare to us, but to a crow it can be full of possibility. There may be scraps near the edge of a curb, dropped food near a cart return, insects near a patch of warmth, or useful objects scattered among leaves and wrappers. Human spaces gather leftovers, and crows are quick to notice where those leftovers tend to appear. They are not drawn to the city because they misunderstand it. They are drawn to it because they read it clearly enough to use it. Cities also provide shelter in ways that are easy to miss. Ledges, signs, tall trees planted along roads, roof edges, utility structures, and quiet corners between buildings can all become part of a crow's daily map. In colder seasons, urban places may even hold slightly more warmth than the open countryside. Pavement absorbs sun. Buildings block wind. Human activity creates little pockets of heat and routine. A crow perched on a metal railing in the last light of day may not be there by chance. The place may hold a small advantage gathered through repeated experience. And then there are the routines. Human life runs on patterns. Garbage appears on certain days. Schoolyards empty at certain hours. Parking lots fill and clear in waves. Cars stop, start, line up, and move again. People gather, eat, drop things, and leave. A crow living in a city does not need to understand our reasons to benefit from our habits. It only needs to recognize that the habits repeat. This is where urban life becomes especially rich for a bird that learns well. The city is chaotic in one sense, but patterned in another. A crow can work with that. This is why urban crows can feel so composed. They are not calm because the city is easy. They are calm because they have learned how to move through difficulty without meeting every moment as if it were new. They know traffic has rhythm. They know some people come close and some do not. They know a stretch of pavement can be dangerous at one time and useful at another. That does not make the city safe. It makes it legible. And for a crow, a place that can be read is a place that can be lived in. The more you picture this, the more familiar crow life in the city begins to feel. The bird on the wire above the intersection is not just resting. It may be watching the repeated pulse of cars below. The bird on the trash bin behind a restaurant is not just scavenging blindly. It may know that this place often offers food. The crow crossing a parking lot with quick, confident steps may not be wandering. It may be following a pattern that has worked before. Urban crow life is full of these small acts of reading and adjustment. That is also why crows feel so familiar to so many people. We see them where we live, not at a distance, but nearby. They share our roads, our neighborhoods, our shopping lots, our schoolyards, our utility poles, our winter trees, and our evening skies. They have become part of the visible texture of daily life. A city without pigeons is easy to imagine. A city without crows can feel strangely flatter, as though some part of its watchfulness has gone missing. And in those places, crows are not just surviving around us, they are reading the systems we have built. In those places, the crow's intelligence becomes visible in a very specific way, not only in memory or tools or family life, but in timing. A city is full of repeated motion. Cars move in streams, lights change in order, crosswalks fill and empty. Schoolyards release children at familiar hours. Restaurant bins become useful after certain parts of the day. Foot traffic thickens, thins, and returns. What looks to us like ordinary routine can become something else to a crow. It becomes pattern, and pattern, once noticed, becomes opportunity. This is one of the quietest impressive things about urban crows. They do not simply live near human systems, they learn the rhythm inside them. A road is not only a dangerous strip of pavement, it is a place where movement speeds up and slows down, where gaps appear, where certain moments allow crossing and others do not. A stoplight is not just a bright signal for people and cars. It is also part of a repeating structure that affects when the ground below becomes accessible. A crow does not need to understand the purpose of the system. It only needs to recognize the order inside it. That is where attention becomes practical intelligence. A crow near a road cannot afford to be careless. Success depends on safe distance, on the speed of moving cars, on the angle of approach, on whether the moment is open or closed. 1 second too early can be dangerous. 1 second later may be fine. And this kind of judgment appears again and again in the human world. Parking lots, alleys, intersections, sidewalks, loading areas, drive-through lanes, parks after lunch, school grounds after dismissal. All of them change not only in space but in time. You can picture a crow on a light pole over a busy street. The bird is still, almost plain against the sky. But below it, the traffic shifts in regular waves. Cars collect, pause, and move. A person drops something at the curb and walks on. Another crosses with food in hand. A gap opens between one burst of motion and the next. To us, these are scattered events. To a crow, they can form a usable sequence. The intelligence here is not dramatic. It is rhythmic. It comes from noticing when the world becomes briefly workable. Some crows have become especially well known for behavior that seems to use this rhythm directly. In Japan, for example, carrion crows have been observed placing hard nuts on roads so that cars crack them open, then retrieving the food when traffic allows. The birds are not controlling the cars, of course, but they are taking advantage of a system larger than themselves, using movement, impact, and timing together. It is one of the clearest images of crow adaptation to human environments, and it works because the birds are not just seeing objects. They are noticing sequence. They are reading a pattern built by others and finding a place inside it. This is part of what makes the crow's urban life so fascinating. Its world overlaps with ours, but never becomes the same world. A person walking down a city block may be thinking about errands, work, time, messages, weather, or home. The crow above that same block may be noticing wind direction, dropped food, safe height, human spacing, car rhythm, and the behavior of other crows nearby. We share the same space but not the same meanings, and yet the crow's life becomes entangled with ours because our routines create real conditions the bird can use. Food waste is one obvious example. Human life sheds scraps constantly. A bag tears. A sandwich crust falls. A bin overflows. An outdoor meal leaves traces. Crows do not need civilization in order to survive, but civilization produces a steady stream of edible accidents, and a bird with memory and caution can learn where those accidents tend to happen. The crow on the fence behind a fast food lot is not only waiting, it may be keeping time. There is something almost mathematical in this, though it never feels cold. The crow is not solving equations in the human sense. It is solving lived problems through repeated contact with risk and reward. The answer lies in distance, order, and moment. When to descend, when to wait, when to fly off, when to return. That is why crow intelligence in cities can seem so grounded and so real. It is not abstract cleverness. It is adaptation under pressure. And yet, even among traffic and wires and bins and paved ground, crows do not become creatures of the city alone. They still belong to older cycles too. They still lift into the evening, still gather in trees, still turn into black motion against a paling sky. And as daylight begins to thin, that older pattern starts to show itself more clearly again, drawing the crow away from the daytime systems of roads and crossings towards something larger, darker, and more ancient in feel. As the day begins to loosen its grip, the city crow starts to look a little less urban and a little more ancient. The same bird that spent the afternoon on poles, rooftops, bins, and roadside edges begins to shift with the light. The hard lines of buildings remain, but the crow's place inside them changes. What mattered in daylight was often timing, food, distance, and the quick reading of human movement. What begins to matter now is gathering. This is one of the most memorable real patterns in crow life. Many crows gather in communal roosts, especially toward evening. Instead of settling wherever they happen to be, large numbers may move toward shared resting places, often the same trees or clusters of trees used again and again. What looked like separate birds across a neighborhood, a campus, a stretch of roads, or a scattering of fields, can slowly begin to reveal itself as a wider population drawing inward. A crow crosses the sky, then another, then a small loose line. Then several dark forms arrive from different directions, all moving towards some destination not obvious at first from the ground. There is something deeply calm about watching that happen. The day is not ending all at once. It is gathering itself. The crows seem to know it before the landscape fully shows it. They rise from parking lot light poles, from schoolyard trees, from wires over roads, from fence lines and rooftop edges, and begin to move with a more collective purpose. The late light catches them differently now. Their feathers lose detail. Their bodies simplify into silhouette. A crow in full afternoon can be read as a bird with gloss, shape, and posture. A crow at dusk becomes more like motion and outline, a dark cut through pale air. That visual shift is part of why evening crows feel so tied to the coming of night. They are not night birds in the strict sense. They do not hunt through darkness the way owls do, but they belong strongly to the threshold between day and dark. Dusk changes the look of them, and their gathering changes the feel of the hour. The same crow that seemed practical in daylight now begins to feel almost symbolic without trying to be. It is simply doing what crows do, Yet the fading sky makes each crossing shape seem older, quieter, and more memorable. Communal roosting also has practical meaning. A shared resting place may offer safety in numbers, warmth, and a center for social contact. A large tree holding many crows is not only crowded, it is informative. Birds arriving there may be keeping track of one another, rejoining family members, or following familiar seasonal habits. Social animals often gain something from ending the day together, and crows are social enough that the roost becomes part of the wider structure of their lives. The tree is not just wood and branches. It is a destination, a repeated answer to the end of daylight. You can picture it in a winter evening scene. The sky is lighter than the ground for a little while longer. Bare branches hold the last shape of the day. One crow lands high up and calls. Another comes in from farther down the road. Then several more arrive from behind the line of buildings, black against a grey-blue sky. For a few minutes, the tree is full of movement. Wings open and fold. Feet search for branches. Calls trade back and forth. Then, little by little, the motion settles. The same place that was empty an hour ago is now holding a gathering. This gathering is one of the strongest real links between crows and the feel of night. People have watched it for generations without needing scientific language to feel its effect. A crow against a darkening sky feels both familiar and ancient because the pattern is so regular and so old. The bird is part of modern life, yes, but in this hour it also seems to step outside modern life. The wires, roads, and rooftops remain, yet the crows crossing above them feel less like creatures of traffic and more like creatures of time itself, answering a rhythm much older than any city street. That may be why dusk gatherings stay in the mind so easily. They gather not only birds, but atmosphere. The world is already losing detail. Sound carries differently. Shapes flatten. Contrast sharpens. The crow enters that visual change with unusual strength because its body is so suited to silhouette. Dark plumage, clear outline, steady wing beats. All of it works with the dimming light. One bird crossing overhead can feel momentary. Many birds moving toward roost can make the whole evening feel as though it is turning. And perhaps that is one reason crows have gathered so much symbolism around them. They so often arrive at the edge of day, when shapes grow darker and meanings feel larger. When those evening gatherings begin, it becomes easier to understand why crows have lived so long in human thought. Not because they are supernatural, and not because the world needs to turn every animal into a symbol, but because some creatures stay in the memory more strongly than others. Crows do that very well. They are easy to see, easy to hear, and hard to forget. Their bodies are dark and clear in outline. Their voices carry across open air. Their movements are steady enough to notice, and their intelligence is strong enough to leave an impression. A person may not know much about crows in scientific terms and still feel almost at once that a crow is a bird worth remembering. Part of that comes from visibility. Many animals live close to people without truly entering human attention. They are too hidden, too silent, too quick, or too ordinary in the wrong way. Crows are ordinary in the right way. They are present enough to be familiar, but distinctive enough to stand apart. A crow on a wire is not just another blur of feathers. A crow in a bare tree at dusk can become the whole visual center of the moment. Even people who do not care much about birds tend to notice crows. Their shape is so readable and their presence so definite that they resist blending into the background. Their timing also matters. Crows are often active at the edges of day, especially in the hours when people themselves are more likely to pause and notice the world around them. Early morning and late evening are the times when light changes fastest, when outlines sharpen, when sounds seem to travel farther, and when the ordinary world can begin to feel slightly more open to meaning. A crow crossing a noon sky may look practical. A crow crossing a fading sky can look almost emblematic, even when it is doing nothing more than going where crows always go. That repeated meeting between crow and dim light has likely helped give the bird much of its symbolic weight. Human beings are also especially drawn to animals that appear watchful. A deer may feel gentle, a gull noisy, a sparrow busy, but a crow often feels observant. It looks back, it pauses, it seems to assess. We are quick to attach meaning to that kind of presence. A creature that appears to notice us can make us notice it more deeply in return. And because crows have real memory, real caution, and real social intelligence, the impression is not entirely invented. They truly are attentive birds. The mythology comes later. First comes the experience of being seen by something that does not speak our language and yet seems far from unaware. That is often how symbolism begins. Not from nowhere, but from repeated real encounters that slowly gather emotional color. A dark bird appears at the same hour again and again. A voice calls from a tree above a road. A group of crows lifts from a field after human movement below. A single bird seems to follow what is happening with unusual interest. Over time, people begin to feel that the crow belongs not only to the landscape, but to some deeper layer of attention within the landscape. The animal becomes memorable first and meaningful second. The crow is especially suited to that kind of transformation because it stands at an interesting point between familiarity and distance. It lives close to us, but not with us. It uses our spaces, but not for our reasons. It can become part of our daily routine without becoming tame. That makes it easy for the human mind to keep projecting a little farther onto it. A completely wild animal may remain too distant for symbolism to grow richly around it. A domestic animal may become too familiar in a different way. The crow lives in a middle space. It is near enough to be known and separate enough to remain slightly mysterious. This does not make crow symbolism foolish. It makes it human. People build meaning out of repetition, visibility, emotion, and memory. A bird that appears across years, across seasons, across roads, fields, villages, battlefields, rooftops, and evening skies will almost certainly gather stories around itself. The crow did not ask for this, and it does not need it. But its real behavior, its timing, its silhouette, its voice, and its attentiveness make it one of the animals most likely to receive it. So when people called crows messengers, watchers, or omens, they were not responding to nothing. They were responding to a real bird whose appearance, habits, and presence make strong impressions on the human mind. The symbolism may not tell us what a crow truly is, but it does tell us why the bird stayed with people so powerfully. And once those meanings begin to settle onto an animal, they can become difficult to separate from the living creature underneath them. Once meaning begins to gather around a bird, it can travel very far. Over long stretches of time and across very different cultures, crows and their close relatives have been linked with death, battle, prophecy, wisdom, trickery, change, and the crossing from one state of life into another. This does not mean that ancient people were simply making things up at random. It means they were responding to a real bird whose appearance and behavior were strong enough to stay in the human mind. A crow is dark in outline, highly visible, highly vocal, and often present at the edges of things. Fields after conflict, roads after movement, trees at dusk, winter branches, and places where life and death are both close at hand. That combination makes symbolism almost inevitable. Some of the darker meanings are easy to understand. Crows are scavengers as well as hunters and foragers. They may gather where something has died, not because they caused it, but because they are part of the natural work of the landscape. To human beings, especially in older times when death was more visible in daily life, that repeated association could feel powerful. A black bird arriving after loss can quickly become linked with loss itself. Over generations, the practical fact of scavenging may harden into omen. The bird is no longer just present at death. It begins to seem as though it belongs to death. Yet that is only one side of the symbolic picture. In many traditions, crows are not just dark or threatening. They are clever, watchful, and strangely knowing. That makes sense too. Human beings are often moved by animals that seem to be paying attention in ways close enough to our own to feel meaningful. A bird that watches from above, remembers faces, uses tools, or gathers socially at dusk, naturally invites comparison with intelligence. The crow becomes more than a scavenger. It becomes a witness, a messenger, or a figure of hidden understanding. Its stillness in a tree can look like thought. Its call across a quiet space can sound like announcement. Its memory and social behavior make it easier for people to imagine that the bird carries knowledge. That is why the symbolic crow is often divided between opposites. In one story, it may stand near death. In another, it may stand near wisdom. In one place, it may be treated as unlucky. In another, it may be respected for intelligence or endurance. Human symbolism often works this way. The same visible features can pull meaning in more than one direction. Dark feathers can suggest mourning, but they can also suggest mystery. A loud call can sound ominous, but it can also sound authoritative. A scavenger can seem disturbing, but it can also seem necessary, part of the deeper order that clears and renews the world. The timing of crows likely deepened all of this. Crows are often most memorable at dawn and dusk, when light is uncertain and the world feels slightly more open to interpretation. A bird seen in strong midday sun is one thing. A bird seen crossing a pale evening sky or calling from a bare tree in the last light is something else. Human beings are especially ready to attach feeling and meaning to moments when the environment itself is changing. At the edge of day, the crow does not need to do very much to seem larger than itself. The light helps, the silhouette helps, The pause between brightness and dark helps. The bird becomes part of transition, and transition is where symbolism grows most easily. There is also the simple fact that crows live near people without fully joining human life. They share space with us, but stay just outside our control. That gives them a special place in the imagination. A completely hidden animal may remain too distant to gather much symbolic detail. A domestic animal may become too familiar, but a crow stays near enough to be noticed and separate enough to remain unreadable in some deeper way. It walks across our roads, watches from our poles, sleeps in trees above our neighborhoods, and yet continues to belong first to its own world. That half-nearness has probably helped sustain its symbolic power for centuries. So crow symbolism tells two stories at once. One story is about the bird itself, its dark body, its scavenging habits, its intelligence, its visible presence at the edges of day and life. The other story is about us, about what human beings do when they meet a creature that is familiar, alert, and hard to forget. We begin to place meaning on it. We let it carry fear, wonder, memory, and thought. And once that happens often enough, the real animal can start to disappear beneath the accumulated image. And once symbolism settles onto a real animal, it can become hard to see the bird clearly again. After that symbolic layer grows thick enough, it can begin to cover the living animal almost completely. A crow becomes a sign before it becomes a bird. Its dark feathers become a mood. Its voice becomes a warning. Its arrival becomes an omen. And slowly, the real creature underneath all of that can fade from view. But when the symbolism quiets down, what remains is not a lesser thing. In many ways, it is something more interesting. It is a real bird with real abilities, moving through the world according to memory, caution, intelligence, hunger, weather, family life, and the repeated demands of being alive. That return to the real crow can feel almost refreshing. The bird does not need anything supernatural added to it. It does not need mystery borrowed from old stories in order to be impressive. A crow is already remarkable in ways that can be plainly seen. It learns, it remembers, it solves problems, it watches closely, it communicates, it adapts, it gathers with others at dusk. It makes use of our roads, our poles, our rooftops, our waste, and our routines. None of this is magic. It is simply the life of a very capable animal, and that is enough. Some of the fear people feel around crows seems to come from projection more than behavior. The bird is dark, so it is treated as dark in meaning. It appears in winter trees and evening skies, so it begins to gather associations with endings, shadows, and unease. It notices us, and that attention can feel unsettling, because most people are more comfortable being observers than being observed. A crow does not stare in the human sense, but it does watch with steadiness. And that steadiness is easy to interpret as something deeper, stranger, or more knowing than it really needs to be. Yet the very traits that make crows seem eerie are usually the same traits that make them scientifically fascinating. Their intelligence can feel uncanny, but it is still animal intelligence. Their memory can feel personal, but it still serves survival. Their social warnings can sound dramatic, but they belong to a real communication system shaped by real pressures. Even the roughness of their voice, which some people hear as ominous, is simply part of a call designed to carry across distance and through cluttered environments. The crow is not performing darkness. It is being a crow. The same is true of scavenging. Because crows are willing to feed on what other animals leave behind, people sometimes treat them as if they are somehow linked to death in a special way. But scavenging is not sinister. It is ecologically normal. It is one of the many ways life continues to move material through the world. A dead thing does not remain untouched forever. It becomes part of the larger landscape again, carried onward by insects, microbes, weather, and animals willing to use what is there. A crow taking part in that process is not a sign of corruption. It is part of the ordinary working of nature, as real and as necessary as seeds falling from a tree or rain returning to the soil. Familiarity helps restore balance here. The more a person notices real crows in real places, the harder it becomes to keep them trapped inside old exaggerations. A crow on a schoolyard fence is not a spirit. A crow on a parking lot light pole is not a prophecy. A crow stepping across a patch of snow near a roadside bin is not trying to symbolize anything at all. It is moving through its own day, reading its own surroundings, following its own needs. And once that ordinary life comes into focus, much of the unnecessary fear falls away. What remains in its place is often a quieter respect. Not the trembling respect people reserve for omens, but the calmer kind that grows from recognition. The crow is a neighbor in the broadest sense. It shares the same weather, the same changing light, many of the same built spaces, and some of the same daily rhythms. It wakes into morning under the same sky. It settles at dusk above the same streets. It learns our routines without ever joining our species. It stays close enough to be known and separate enough to remain fully itself. There is something deeply restful in seeing the crow that way. The bird no longer has to carry all the weight human beings placed on it. It can return to being what it always was: alert, social, clever, adaptable, and entirely real. A presence in the branches, a dark line against evening cloud, a voice above the road. A watcher, yes, but not in any supernatural sense. Only in the sense that it lives by watching well. And once the symbol quiets down, what remains is something maybe more interesting than an omen. A neighbor we never fully noticed. After all the stories, the symbols, the warnings, the memory, the tools, and the intelligence, it feels right to bring the crow fully back into ordinary life. Not into myth, not into omen, just into the familiar human world where it has been all along. A crow on a schoolyard fence. A crow on a rooftop at the end of the block. A crow stepping across a parking lot with quick, dark feet. A crow lifting from a field beside the road. These are not rare sights. In many places, they are part of the texture of the day. Crows live beside us in a way that is both simple and easy to overlook. They are there near streets, near houses, near poles and wires, near open fields beyond shopping lots, near schoolyards after the last bell, near bins behind buildings, and near bare trees standing over sidewalks in winter. They do not hide from the human world completely, and they do not belong to it either. They move through its edges, using what they can use, avoiding what they must avoid, and remaining unmistakably themselves the whole time. That is one reason they feel so familiar to so many people. Even someone who has never thought deeply about birds will probably know the look of a crow. The dark shape is part of daily visual life. It belongs to morning roads and late afternoon roofs. It belongs to sports fields, quiet suburbs, industrial edges, farm roads, and the pale spaces of evening sky. A person may not stop and study the bird, but the bird still enters the day. It is noticed without being fully considered. And perhaps that is what makes crows so interesting in the end. Most people pass them without thinking about the complexity in front of them. The crow on the light post may appear to be doing almost nothing. The crow crossing the asphalt may look like just another scavenger. The bird in the tree may seem to be only a black outline against the light. But now that the picture has widened, it becomes harder to see such scenes in a flat way. The bird may be remembering a face, judging a distance, waiting for a safe moment, listening for another crow, or returning to a familiar place that has held meaning for years. This does not make the ordinary scene less ordinary. It makes it deeper. The schoolyard is still a schoolyard. The road is still a road. The parking lot is still a parking lot. But the presence of a crow links those places to something older than pavement and brick. It reminds us that the animal world did not disappear when our world was built around it. It adjusted. It moved through the gaps. It climbed onto the poles and roofs and signs we raised. It learned our schedules without becoming one of us. In that sense, a crow standing above a city block is like a visible thread between two worlds that are often treated as separate, but never fully are. That thread can be felt in very small moments. A person unlocks a car while a crow watches from a cart return. A child leaves a school building while crows move between branches overhead. A delivery truck backs into an alley, while one bird waits on a fence for the noise to settle. A jogger passes a patch of grass where two crows are already searching the ground. None of these moments feels grand, but each one carries a kind of coexistence. Human routine and crow routine share the same hour, the same weather, the same fading light, the same physical space. There is something calming in that recognition. The world begins to feel less divided into human life on one side and wildlife on the other. The crow softens that line. It is not a pet. It is not a visitor from some untouched distance. It is a real, thinking, adaptable bird living through the same changing days we live through, though by very different meanings. Its presence gives ordinary places a little more depth, a little more motion, a little more awareness than they seemed to have a moment before. A rooftop with a crow on it feels different from an empty rooftop. A winter tree with one black bird in its branches feels more alive than the same tree without it. Even a parking lot, that most practical and flattened of spaces, changes when a crow walks across it with purpose. The bird carries into the scene a sense that life is still being watched, still being interpreted, still being quietly lived just beyond the limits of our own attention. And perhaps what feels most striking about crows in the end is not just that they are intelligent, but that they carry that intelligence so quietly. That quietness is where the crow becomes easiest to rest with. After all the facts about memory, planning, family life, city patterns, and human stories, there is something soothing about returning to the simplest truth of all. A crow often spends long moments doing very little that can be seen. It watches, it listens, it waits. And somehow, that pause can be just as noticeable as flight, sound, or movement. A perched crow can seem almost made of stillness. It stands on a branch, a fence, a roof edge, or a wire, and the body settles into a shape so steady that it almost disappears into the place around it. Then, after enough quiet, a small movement reveals how much attention was there all along. The head turns slightly, the eye catches light, the feathers shift in the wind. One foot adjusts its grip. Nothing dramatic has happened, and yet the bird never felt absent from the moment. It felt present in a deeper way. That is part of what makes crow awareness so striking. It does not always announce itself through action. Sometimes it appears most clearly through restraint. The bird does not rush to prove that it is alert. It simply remains alert. In a world that often looks busy on the surface, that kind of attention can feel unexpectedly calm. A crow is not filling every second with movement. It is allowing information to come to it. You can picture this most easily in a late afternoon scene. The air has begun to cool. The edges of buildings and branches look a little softer than they did earlier in the day. Somewhere above a quiet street, or at the edge of a field, a crow sits alone on a high branch. For several seconds, or perhaps several minutes, it does almost nothing obvious. A person passing below might barely register it. And yet the crow is not idle in the empty sense of the word. It may be listening to distant calls, tracking motion at ground level, feeling the wind, noting the behavior of another bird, or simply holding itself inside the space with full awareness. Awareness does not always look busy. Human beings often forget that. We tend to recognize attention most easily when it is paired with visible effort, with movement, with reaction, with signs that something is actively happening. But a crow reminds us that another kind of attention exists, one that gathers quietly. The bird can remain in place and still be deeply engaged with its surroundings. It does not need to perform its intelligence constantly for that intelligence to remain present. This is one reason a perched crow becomes such a strong image once you begin to notice it. The bird is almost a study in attention. The line of the back, the angle of the head, the fixed feet, the dark eye, the measured pause between one movement and the next, all of it gives the impression that the bird is taking in the world without wasting anything. Even its silence begins to feel meaningful. We have spent much of the script listening to crows, watching them use tools, remember faces, learn routines, and gather at dusk. But there is another side to all of that capability. Much of it depends on the bird being able to pause long enough for the world to reveal itself. That quieter side of crow life helps the whole subject settle. Instead of thinking only about the most surprising facts, the crow can now be seen in a softer and more continuous way. Not as a collection of remarkable abilities, but as a living presence shaped by those abilities. A bird that watches because watching matters. A bird that waits because waiting can be wise. A bird that does not separate intelligence from attention, but seems to let one grow naturally inside the other. There is something almost restful in that model of awareness. The crow is not frantic. It is not restless without purpose. It can be still without becoming dull. And perhaps that is why people so often remember the sight of one crow alone in a tree. The image carries a certain emotional quiet. The bird is not asking anything from the viewer. It is not performing beauty in the usual way. It is simply present, and its presence has weight. As the subject softens here, that may be one of the most valuable things the crow offers. Not only curiosity, but a reminder that attention can be gentle, that awareness can take the form of pause, that a dark bird in stillness may hold more life than a louder creature in constant motion. And when the day grows dimmer, that quiet attention seems to merge with the light itself, as if the bird and the evening are entering the same slow mood. By this point, the crow almost seems made for late light, not because it belongs to darkness in the way a truly nocturnal bird does, but because evening changes the crow in such a visible and memorable way. As the sun drops lower and the day gives up its detail, the bird becomes simpler to the eye and somehow larger to the imagination. What was once feather texture, sheen, posture, and gloss begins to flatten into outline. The crow is still the same animal, still carrying the same memory, caution, and intelligence. But now the light presents it differently. The world stops describing the bird in fine detail and begins describing it in shape. That is one reason crow silhouettes become so prominent at the end of the day. Their bodies are built in a way that reads clearly against a pale sky. The broad wings, the slightly rounded head, the firm bill, the fan of the tail, all of these hold together even when color and texture begin to disappear. A crow crossing a washed evening sky can be recognized in an instant. It does not need brightness to stand out. In fact, it may stand out most strongly when the light is fading. Evening does this to many things. It simplifies. It removes small distractions and leaves only the strongest forms behind. A rooftop becomes a dark edge. A row of trees becomes a soft, uneven wall. A wire becomes a line drawn across the air, and a crow becomes one of the clearest moving shapes in that reduced world. Its flight no longer asks to be read in detail. It becomes motion itself, dark against light, simple against soft, living against stillness. That contrast is part of what makes the sight so strong. There is also something fitting in the way crow life meets the close of day. Roosting behavior ties crows naturally to this hour. We have already seen how many crows begin to gather and move toward shared resting places as daylight thins. Because of that, evening does not only change how crows look, it changes how often we notice them. A bird that spent the afternoon reading roads, rooftops, and open ground may now lift into the wider air, drawing the eye upward with it. The sky becomes part of the crow's final movement for the day, and that movement becomes part of how human beings experience evening itself. This gives the crow a special place in the atmosphere of nightfall. Night does not belong only to owls, stars, and the first lit windows in houses. It also begins with crows leaving the day behind. They are among the creatures that mark the transition most visibly. Before full darkness arrives, before the stars fully claim the sky, there is often that brief period when crows are still crossing overhead, still calling from trees, still settling into branches that will hold them through the night. The edge of night is not empty. It is occupied by these final dark movements. You can picture the scene very easily. A pale moon may already be visible, though the sky still holds some blue. Roof lines are darker now. The highest branches are losing detail. A crow lifts from a chimney, another from a parking lot light, another from the edge of a tree. Their bodies pass one by one across the open space above the street. No single movement feels dramatic, and yet together they alter the whole feeling of the hour. They make the evening seem more inhabited, more observed, more gently complete. Perhaps that is why the dark body of a crow against a pale sky has such staying power in the mind. It is one of the simplest images in nature, but also one of the strongest. It contains contrast without clutter. It contains life without noise. It is clear, readable, and slightly distant all at once. A bright tropical bird may impress through color. A crow at evening impresses through restraint. It becomes memorable by becoming simpler, not more elaborate. And there is something soothing in that simplification. As daylight fades, the world asks less of the eyes. Details fall away, surfaces quiet down. The crow fits beautifully into that process because it, too, becomes less detailed and more essential. A branch, a wire, a roof edge, a crow. These are enough. The scene no longer needs to explain itself. It only needs to settle. By now, the crow has traveled through many forms in this video. Watcher, learner, problem solver, family member, city dweller, subject of myth, ordinary neighbor. All of those remain true, but evening gathers them into something quieter. The bird does not lose complexity as night approaches. It carries that complexity into shadow and lets the eye hold only what it can hold. An outline, a crossing shape, a still form in a tree. And after enough evenings like that, it becomes easy to understand how crows settle not only into trees and wires, but into memory itself. After enough time with crows, they begin to settle into human life in a way that feels both small and lasting. Not with grand drama, and not with the bright force of some rare animal seen only once, but with repetition. A crow on the same roofline every few mornings. A pair moving across the same field after rain. A familiar dark shape on a school fence just before the day begins. These are not spectacular moments. They are recurring ones. And because they recur, they take root. That may be part of why people remember local crows so easily. A crow is often not just a bird in general. It becomes the crow near the corner store, the crow in the winter tree outside the apartment, the crow that always seems to be on the telephone wire at dusk, the one that crosses the road near the mailbox, the pair that calls from behind the schoolyard after lunch. Even without trying, people begin to sort them into place. The bird becomes linked with a street, a season, an hour, a routine. It stops feeling like a passing creature and begins to feel like part of the area itself. This happens because crow routines overlap with human routines so often. The birds are active when people are out walking, driving, opening shops, taking children to school, carrying groceries, going to work, or returning home. They share the visible hours of the day. A person may not know much about bird behavior, but if the same crow shape keeps appearing near the same path, then recognition begins almost automatically. The crow becomes woven into the pattern of the route. The route feels slightly different without it. There is something very gentle about that kind of familiarity. It does not ask for devotion. It does not require naming. It just gathers quietly over time. A person may not even realize how much a local crow has become part of their sense of place until the bird is absent for a while. Then the gap begins to show. The fence looks a little emptier. The tree seems too still. The morning feels flatter than usual. The ordinary presence, once unnoticed, reveals that it had been holding a small but real place in the structure of daily life. Crows also become markers of season in a way that is easy to feel. In winter, their dark bodies stand out sharply against pale sky, snow, and bare branches. In summer, they move through thicker green, louder afternoons, and heat-shimmering pavement. In autumn, they cross fields and parking lots under lower light, and in spring, they seem to return with the looseness of changing weather. Because they are visible across the whole year, and because they adapt so well to changing conditions, they help measure time without meaning to. A person may not think, "It is late November now," in a formal way. Instead, they may see a crow in a leafless tree at 4:30 in the afternoon and feel the season instantly. The same is true of time of day. A crow in bright morning light carries one feeling. A crow at noon on a hot roof edge carries another. A crow crossing the evening sky toward roost carries yet another. These repeated appearances make crows part of the emotional shape of the day. They belong to transitions, to leaving home, to returning home, to school letting out, to the fading of light, to the first quiet after traffic softens. Because they keep appearing in those moments, they begin to carry some of the moments with them. This may be why crows linger in human thought so easily. Not only because they are intelligent, though they are. Not only because they are dark and striking, though they are. But because they recur, they stay, they return. They become familiar without becoming dull. A familiar crow can quietly belong to a familiar life in the same way a certain tree, a certain bench, a certain roofline, or a certain stretch of road can belong to it. The bird becomes part of the remembered environment. And that remembered environment is never made of human things alone. That may be one of the most calming truths hidden inside the crow's presence. The places we live in are not only ours. Streets, rooftops, fields, poles, bins, trees, schoolyards, and parking lots may look entirely human-made at first. But crows move through them with their own roots, their own purposes, their own histories, and their own repeated return. Their consistency reminds us that life is always layered. Our daily routines run alongside other daily routines. Our familiar places are familiar to other creatures too. So by the time a crow becomes part of memory, it has done something larger than simply remain visible. It has joined itself to place. It has become one of the quiet signs by which a life is recognized. The branch, the wire, the roof, the season, the hour, and the dark bird there among them all begin to hold together. And once a creature becomes part of place, memory, and routine, it no longer feels like a passing bird at all. It begins to feel woven into the shape of the world around us. And so, by the end of the night, the crow returns to where it began. Not as a mystery solved, and not as a symbol fully stripped of every old meaning, but as something quieter and clearer. A bird on a wire, a bird in a tree, a bird on a rooftop in the last of the light. The same dark shape that might once have seemed simple now carries more with it. Not because the crow changed, but because we stayed long enough to notice what was already there. A crow is intelligent, but not in some loud or showy way. Its intelligence lives in memory, in patience, in caution, in timing, in social life, in the careful reading of ordinary places. It lives in the way a bird can watch without rushing, learn without speaking, and adapt without ever seeming hurried. It lives in the choice of a branch, the distance kept from danger, the return to a useful place, the recognition of a face, the carrying of a tool, the gathering at dusk. None of those things needs to be dramatized. They are already enough. A crow is social too, and perhaps that matters just as much. We have seen it in family life, in calls moving across open space, in younger birds learning slowly from older ones, in the shared knowledge that can pass from one crow to another. Even when one bird appears alone, it often belongs to a larger world just beyond what we can see. Another crow may be nearby. Another call may be waiting from a distant tree. Another memory may already connect that bird to places, relatives, and routines beyond the single moment in front of us. A crow is adaptable. That may be one of its deepest strengths. It moves through fields and roads, schoolyards and rooftops, wires and winter branches, parking lots and evening skies. It does not demand a perfect world in order to live well within it. It studies what is there. It adjusts. It remembers. It notices patterns in the systems we have built and finds its own path through them. Human spaces become part of the crow's daily map, but the crow never fully becomes a creature of human life. It remains itself inside our world, which may be one reason it feels so striking when we truly begin to see it. And still, after everything we have said, the crow remains slightly mysterious. But perhaps that mystery is gentler now. It is not the mystery of omens or superstition. It is the mystery of ordinary life, when ordinary life is no longer hurried past. A crow feels mysterious because most people only glance at it. They see the dark body, hear the rough call, and move on. The bird stays ordinary only as long as attention remains thin. Once attention deepens, the ordinary begins to open. That may be the quiet lesson the crow leaves behind. Not only that a bird can be clever, or that memory can live in dark eyes looking down from a branch, but that the world itself grows richer when we stop moving through it so quickly. The crow has been here all along, on warning wires, in bare trees, over roads, near fields, above schoolyards, along rooftops, in the soft reduction of evening. It did not need to announce its complexity to us. It simply carried that complexity quietly through the same days we were already living. Now the crow on the wire can be seen again, but differently. The crow in the tree is no longer just a shape. The crow on the rooftop is no longer just part of the skyline. The fading sky behind it is no longer empty space. Everything has become a little fuller. The bird still belongs to the same ordinary places, but those places hold more life than they seemed to before. A branch holds waiting. A call holds message. A familiar corner holds memory. A gathering at dusk holds family, timing, and habit. The whole world of the crow has been there in plain sight. And perhaps that is the most restful thought of all. Nothing had to be invented. Nothing had to be exaggerated. The wonder was already present in the bird itself, in its stillness, in its movement, in its quiet intelligence, in the way it shares our spaces without ever fully becoming ours, in the way it enters memory not through spectacle, but through repetition and presence. So the night can close gently now. The crow remains where it has always been, thinking, watching, learning, gathering, and settling into the dark with the rest of the world. And as the branches grow dimmer, and the rooftops soften, and the last shapes of evening begin to rest, the crow can simply remain there too, not as a puzzle to solve, but as one more living presence in the calm and thoughtful world that has been around us all along.